Hi, my friends. I'm back from a long vacation in Europe, mostly in Germany, but part of it as well in France and in Switzerland. And it was quite amazing and very impressive, the cleanliness and the friendly people. And on the other hand, the enormous amount of traffic wasn't all that great. Well, maybe we'll get to that later. Right now, what I should do is finish the story or even start the story on the Yukon. Um, well, I left you at the airport. Quite frankly, I left you on a lake, and that's not really true. When I recapped this whole thing, I realized I'd made a mistake. The plane was a land plane, not an amphibious one, and the amphibious one comes in later at another time. But anyway, we were dropped off in Watson Lake, as I indicated to you, and it's a little Indian village in the Yukon, not far from the very northernmost part of British Columbia. And from there and there were 6 of us in total, we were hauled into a town called Cassiar, Cassiar. It's an asbestos company that was located in the very northernmost part of British Columbia. We were driving with an old truck. We were driving through on muddy roads for a couple of hours. It was in the evening. We came by an abandoned ghost town with a dance hall that had fallen apart. This had been a town during the gold rush days. And we also came by a guy that was running a steam engine on a river, panning for gold. Now that's a rather unusual occupation. We don't know how well he's doing or was doing, but our suspicion is he couldn't have been doing all that badly because he's supposed to have been there for over 10 years, and that's a long time to stay around if you're not doing anything. But of course he claimed to everybody else that he was losing his shirt and he wasn't making any money. Well, so what? We arrived in Cassiar, and it turned out to be nothing but a tent town. Little mud road with tents on both sides and a bunkhouse with Chinese cooks in there. Not a single woman in sight. We were dumped at the cookhouse and were given something to eat, and the next morning I was to meet my future boss at the machine shop. Well, when we got to the machine shop the next morning, the other 5 guys had already been divided up into groups, and they had certain qualifications, and now came my turn. And when the boss asked me, Bernie, where did you work last? Well, I said, I worked at a gas station. No, he said, I mean as a diesel mechanic, not a gas station, for crying out loud. And I said, no, that was my last job, and actually it was my only job in this country. He said, come again? Well, I said, I haven't really worked as a diesel mechanic. Mind you, I took a course and I graduated and I got my certificate, and I showed him my certificate. And he said, you've got to be kidding me. This is a correspondence course, for crying out loud. What are you trying to pull? We asked for a diesel mechanic, fully qualified. Well, then he called over his buddy and he said, Joe, you got to come here. You got to look at this. You won't believe it. Look what they're sending us. He said, this clown comes in. He doesn't know anything from Adam. All he's done is read up about the diesel mechanics. We can't use him. Well, I was feeling a little bit down at that time, and I figured, I hope they're not going to send me back. I'm not going to pay for this, since I haven't paid to come in. Then he figured the same thing. He said, well, can you drive? I said, yeah, sure, I can drive. Well, what have you been driving? I said, well, cars, of course. He said, I don't mean that. I mean trucks, anything, heavy machinery. I said, no, but, a truck's just a dumpy car. That's all it is. Jesus, he said, I don't believe this. So I'll tell you what, we'll send you to one of our drivers, and you'll spend some time with him for a couple of days, and then if he says you can drive, okay, we'll let you go. But you don't even have a license for a truck, for crying out loud. Well, it didn't make me feel all that great. I know I was kind of cocky, but this wasn't a good beginning. Well, anyway, we were divided up into our tents, and I pulled 3 tent mates. One of them was a colored guy, black guy. Second one was an Indian, purebred Indian. He was a Crow Indian, very moody character. And the third one was a real fun guy to have around, but he had a record, and he was released from prison, early release, because they said if you go up to the Yukon, we'll let you get out early. And when I asked him what he had done, he sort of hemmed and hawed, and of course he wanted to feed this kind of rumor mill. And so what I did is asked other people, and Jesus, he was anything from a thief to a murderer, and that only made him feel happy, but he wouldn't let me know what was wrong with him. But he was certainly a weird guy, I'll tell you that. Well, my first day on the job, I was going up with a guy in a truck. Now, this is a 10-ton truck. It's an international truck, and it had 3 sets of brakes. It had the normal brakes, you know, like an emergency brake. It had the normal hydraulic brake, and then it had a water brake. I don't know if you ever heard of a water brake. It's a huge water tank under the truck that has to be filled when you start out in the bottom. It's about a 50-gallon tank with ice-cold water. And then you go up the mountain, and by the time you come down, and you're down, the water is boiling, actually boiling, because that mountain was something else. 7,000 foot high with zigzag switchbacks all the way up. So you start on one end, you go up at an incline, you come to the edge of the mountain, and you have to go back and forth, and then go up the next incline, and on and on and on. There were about 6 of them. And these were little plateaus that you had to bring the truck up to. Now, going up wasn't a big problem, but coming down with a 10-ton load, and the road not being perfect, believe me, it was as narrow as the truck, and there was only one spot between the switchbacks where you could hold it. I got to stop right now, and I will continue next time. Well, I was wrong. There's a bit more time I have left, and before I get my director status, I have to watch that clock. Well, anyway, we got up to the very top, and it was quite a hair-raising experience, because there's a very sharp drop all the way down to the bottom. There's only one little spot where you can have the oncoming truck meet, and you have to pull into that stop. Now, the truck coming down from the top always has the right-of-way, so these guys must have figured out in advance when he was coming, and they pulled into the very into the mountain, pulling up the mirrors and then waiting for the truck from the top coming down and going by you. Now, going down one way, you were sitting on the outside over the incline. Going down the other way, when you had your switchback, you were on the inside. So if you ever wanted to jump out, you better do it while you're on the inside and when you're on that particular spot where you can meet another truck. Otherwise, you'd be in real trouble. So now I got to stop for sure.